On the dark, winding roads of New Jersey's Pine Barrens, there is an urban legend that has terrified drivers for generations.
The story tells of a ghostly hitchhiker, a young woman in a white dress who appears on the side of the road, seeking a ride. Those who pick her up often find themselves in the midst of a terrifying encounter. One rainy night, a truck driver named Tom was making his way through the Pine Barrens.
He had been on the road for hours and was looking forward to reaching his destination.
As he drove, he saw a young woman standing by the side of the road, drenched from the rain. Feeling sorry for her, he pulled over and offered her a ride. The woman climbed into the truck, thanking Tom for his kindness. She was quiet and seemed nervous, but Tom didn't press her for details. They drove in silence for a while, with only the sound of the rain hitting the windshield breaking the stillness. Tom glanced over at the woman occasionally, noticing that she seemed to be growing paler by the minute. Suddenly, she turned to Tom and said in a trembling voice, "Please, don't stop.
Just keep driving."
Confused, Tom assured her that he wasn't planning to stop.
The woman looked out the window, her expression one of sheer terror.
As they continued driving, Tom noticed that the air inside the truck had grown cold, and he could see his breath in the air. He glanced at the woman again, but she was gone. The passenger seat was empty, and there was no sign of the young woman.
Tom slammed on the brakes, pulling over to the side of the road.
He searched the truck, but she was nowhere to be found. Terrified, Tom drove to the nearest town and reported the incident to the local police. They told him that he wasn't the first to have encountered the ghostly hitchhiker. According to legend, the woman had died in a car accident on that very road years ago, and her spirit was doomed to wander the Pine Barrens, seeking a ride from passing drivers. Tom never forgot that night and avoided the Pine Barrens whenever possible. The legend of the ghostly hitchhiker continued to haunt the residents of New Jersey, a chilling reminder of the tragic accident that had claimed the young woman's life. In the heart of Boston, there stands an old, grand hotel known for its luxurious charm and impeccable service. But beneath its elegant exterior lies a dark and sinister past that has left many guests terrified. The history of the hotel is marred by tales of mysterious deaths and ghostly encounters, making it one of the most haunted places in America. One winter evening, Sarah and her boyfriend, Mark, decided to spend a romantic weekend at the hotel. They checked into a beautiful room on the 4th floor, unaware of the hotel's eerie reputation. The room was spacious, with antique furniture and a large window overlooking the bustling city below. The first night was uneventful, but as they settled in for their second night, things began to take a terrifying turn. Around midnight, Sarah was awakened by the sound of faint whispering.
She looked around the room, but there was no one there. Mark was fast asleep beside her.
Trying to brush it off, she closed her eyes and tried to go back to sleep.
The whispering grew louder, and Sarah could feel a cold breeze against her face. She opened her eyes and saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of the bed.
The figure was that of a woman, dressed in a long, flowing dress from a bygone era. Her face was pale and expressionless, and her eyes seemed to bore into Sarah's soul. Sarah screamed, waking Mark, who immediately turned on the bedside lamp. The figure vanished, leaving the room eerily silent. Mark tried to comfort Sarah, but she was too shaken to sleep. They decided to stay up for the rest of the night, keeping the lights on. The next morning, they spoke to the hotel manager about their experience. He reluctantly shared that many guests had reported similar encounters over the years. According to legend, the ghost was that of a woman who had died under mysterious circumstances in the hotel during the early 1900s. Her spirit was said to be restless, wandering the halls and rooms in search of something or someone. Sarah and Mark decided to cut their trip short and check out of the hotel. As they left, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The experience left them both deeply disturbed, and they vowed never to return to the haunted hotel. In the heart of New Orleans, a city known for its rich history and supernatural occurrences, there is a story that has left many terrified. It involves a doll, known as Annabelle, that is said to be possessed by a malevolent spirit. The doll was kept in a museum dedicated to the occult, where it was locked in a glass case to prevent it from causing harm. One evening, a group of college students visited the museum as part of a paranormal research project. Among them was a skeptical student named Alex, who didn't believe in ghosts or spirits. He laughed at the stories about Annabelle, convinced they were nothing more than superstition. As the group toured the museum, the guide shared the history of Annabelle. The doll had been found by a young couple who claimed it moved on its own and left them threatening messages. After a series of terrifying incidents, they contacted a renowned paranormal investigator, who determined that the doll was possessed by a malevolent spirit. The doll was then placed in the museum for safekeeping. Intrigued by the story, Alex decided to test the legend. When the guide wasn't looking, he opened the glass case and took a selfie with the doll, mocking its supposed powers. His friends, worried about the consequences, urged him to put the doll back, which he did reluctantly. That night, Alex began to experience strange occurrences. He heard whispering voices and saw shadowy figures moving around his apartment. Objects were moved or went missing, and he had terrifying nightmares about the doll. One night, he woke up to find Annabelle sitting on his bedside table, staring at him with lifeless eyes. Panicked, Alex contacted the museum and explained what had happened. The curator, alarmed by his story, agreed to help. They performed a cleansing ritual and returned Annabelle to the museum, locking her back in the glass case. Despite their efforts, Alex continued to experience paranormal activity. He sought the help of a local voodoo priestess, who performed a powerful ritual to cleanse his home and protect him from the malevolent spirit. Slowly, the activity subsided, but Alex was left deeply scarred by the experience. The legend of Annabelle and the terrifying encounter continued to spread, serving as a chilling reminder of the malevolent forces that can inhabit seemingly innocent objects. The museum reinforced its security measures, ensuring that the possessed doll remained locked away from those who might unwittingly unleash its dark powers.
In the small town of Arlington, Texas, there is a bridge known as Screaming Bridge.
The bridge, located on a remote road, is notorious for the eerie screams that can be heard echoing through the night. Local legends tell of a tragic accident that occurred decades ago, involving a school bus that plunged off the bridge, killing all the children on board. Since then, the bridge has been haunted by the restless spirits of the victims. One summer night, a group of friends decided to investigate the legend for themselves. John, Lisa, Mike, and Emily had heard the stories and were skeptical but curious. They drove to the bridge around midnight, parking their car a short distance away and walking the rest of the way. As they approached the bridge, the air grew noticeably colder. The night was eerily quiet, with only the sound of their footsteps breaking the silence. They stood in the middle of the bridge, listening intently. At first, they heard nothing. But then, faintly, they began to hear the sound of children laughing and playing. The laughter quickly turned into screams, piercing and filled with terror. The friends looked at each other in fear, realizing that the stories might be true. Suddenly, they saw the faint outline of a school bus at the edge of the bridge, as if it were about to plunge into the water below. The ghostly image was accompanied by the screams of children, growing louder and more desperate. Lisa, unable to handle the terror, screamed and ran back to the car, followed closely by the others. They jumped into the car and sped away, not stopping until they were far from the bridge. They all agreed never to return to Screaming Bridge and warned others to stay away as well. The experience left them deeply shaken, and they couldn't forget the haunting screams they had heard that night. The legend of Screaming Bridge continued to terrify the residents of Arlington, a chilling reminder of the tragic accident that had occurred so many years ago.